Right, and we are live. And give me a minute to start recording before I forgot. Record to the cloud. Right, good morning, good afternoon. Sorry about the echo, it's coming from my phone. Okay, hi, I'm Aris. I'm ex-banking executive of over 2 decades, turned certified ICF certified coach, and I support my client to embrace their authenticity so they can better their executive presence, increase their confidence and effectiveness as a leader. And of course, I'm also a DEI advocate, where I served over 7 years as in a renowned MPO in Singapore to drive financial professionalism in the financial industry, where I chair membership, mentoring pillar, and working with many senior leaders in the industry. And welcome to the series Authenticity and Inclusivity. And give me a minute, I'm trying to put out a caption so you can see the word in case you're not used to my Singaporean accent. I know some people, okay, so there you go. So today we are going to have a very, very interesting conversation with Shree Mogan to dive a little deeper into what does this authenticity means, especially in a work setting, in a career direction, and in whom we work for. And of course, we're going to get her to share with us how she finds her truth, walk her truth, and embrace her authenticity. She has a very interesting background. I'll leave her to tell you more, which is she actually graduated accounting and finance. I can't believe it, okay? And then she moved into IT and finally into the HR space that she is today. And she works for Riot Games as the APAC publishing HR business partner. And she has more than 15 years experience in banking, fintech, high-tech sector that's been, of course, the MNC, and of course, in startup, specializing in human resource as a HR business partner, talent acquisition, learning and development, and a DEI. Without further ado, and let me pass the mic to her and to this brilliant lady there. I think you need to unmute yourself and then tell us a little bit about yourself. And I'm going to start. The first question is, how has the journey been unique?
Firstly, thanks so much, Aries, for that lovely introduction. I will probably start into a bit of a self-introduction, and then I'll go to answer your question on how has my journey been unique. So I'll start with something personal, which is that I'm Singaporean, third generation Indian, born and brought up in Singapore, studied and grown up mostly in Singapore. And as Aries had mentioned, I did start my academic career, academic life with accounting and finance background, believe it or not. And then when I started working, I actually moved into the first 4 to 5 years was actually IT service desk, information security. And then it was only later that I moved into HR through talent acquisition and now in HR business partnering. Along the way, of course, I have actually dealt with several other substreams in human resources, such as my personal favorite, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also on learning and development. And as a TA, you also had to get to dabble with a bit of compensation and benefits, but not a whole lot of it. My career actually takes me through, again, the banking sector, followed by startups. And that was a concerted effort on my part to actually move from banking to startups, startups, particularly in Asia. And now I'm actually in a very different industry where I started off, which is the gaming industry. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I think that the Wi-Fi has kind of slow a little bit. I do feel that. And then kind of come back again.
Okay. Let me know if I mean, this is a problem with technology, but let me know if I do get cut off again. So to answer your question on why do I think my path is unique, I think each person's path, be it in career or life, is unique, right? And I think mine specifically so because of the fact that I want to start with a quote maybe to explain why I think my journey has been unique, which is from one of my favorite authors, Brene Brown. To be authentic, we must cultivate the courage to be imperfect and vulnerable. And I think that's kind of the core to how I've navigated my career or work life. When I was studying, I wanted to do a business course and I ended up doing accounting and finance. But it was very clear to me and apparent in my third year that I don't think I want a career in that, because I personally felt that I may not be as successful as I want to be or as happy as I want to be in that. But I didn't know where else that might lead me to. So that involved me in the next couple of years to really go through a series of different roles, companies to figure out what I wanted to do. And I think that required a lot of courage. That required a lot of me sort of stepping out of my comfort zone. And it also required me, like what Brene Brown said in her quote, to be vulnerable. Because at some point, I had to take the first step, not knowing if that's going to lead me to success. But that helped me really venture out into understanding where are my strengths, where are my weaknesses, where do I want to grow. So I think that, in my perspective, has been quite unique in my career. And again, having the great opportunity to cut across MNC startups, and that too in different sectors, has been very helpful as well to sort of build my experience, right? I've never necessarily said no to a project unless I really did not want to do it because I felt like maybe I don't know how to do it. But most of the times I said yes, and I wanted to learn from that journey. And that's how I think I've built sort of my career opportunities. And last but not least, learning is a key motivation for me. So I've always wanted to learn along the way and build my strengths and just get to know myself a little better. So I think in those aspects, I find that my journey might have been unique for me.
I'm going to pick up a few points that I find is really interesting. You mentioned that in you want to do business study, but end up doing accounting and finance, your third year, you know that's not what you want. Okay, that's a key. But you don't know what else and where can you go. Interesting, because to be honest, most of us are in that journey. I remember there was a client ever asked me, I wish I'll be like this, other people who know what they want. And I say, well, actually, you know what? You were quite normal. Most of us don't really know what we want. We don't really know where we're going to go. But the good thing is, if you don't know what you want, you can start to eat in a minute. And you mentioned a lot about Brene Brown, about that vulnerability, about having that courage and stepping out of the comfort zone. Because when you're graduating something, you want to find a field, especially in Asia. I think if you're not in the Asia context, you probably won't understand. To work in a particular field, you need to be like, if you want to do engineering, make sure you have an engineering degree. You want to do accountancy, please make sure you have an accountancy degree. It does not accept that you don't have that background and go into that. This is like 15, 20, 25 years ago. I know these days things are different, but my time, and I think Shree probably time is like that. You need to have that qualification to go into where you want to go. Unless your parents have some connection, then of course that's a different story. I'm talking about really realistic. And then you mentioned about stepping out of your comfort zone and taking the very first step. And of course, that big quote came to my mind, Lao Tzu, the journey of 1,000 miles, start with the first step. So that is really true. Because we are always, speaking for myself, we are like, oh, yeah, I want to do this, but it's like so scary. If I go there, what am I going to do? And a lot of us cling to our comfort zone because it's too scary to step out, and because we don't know what is there. And a lot of that courage. And you also mentioned learning is the key motivator to get to know yourself better. I'm very, very keen to explore more about what actually give you that courage to take that first step forward.
That's a really great question.
Yeah.
The courage, maybe the different perspective on the word courage is, at that point, I was just trying to figure out what I am interested in, or what makes me happy, or what makes me motivated to do the job that, to get up every morning to go and do something. right? So I think for me, it was the trying to figure it out. Now, I mean, I could term it as courage, but back then it was just trying to figure out what is it that I wanted to do. And I'm going to maybe I'll take you all through this particular incident that happened for me. I think we all remember 2008 as the one of the financial crises that we have all gone through in our careers. I remember where I was. And in that year was when I actually had to go through a huge change for myself. So I had seen the fall of, I was in Merrill Lynch, which was then renamed to Bank of America, but that was the year Lehman Brothers kind of closed. And then I remember a couple of years later when I was then with Barclays, there was this process that we went through, and this happened on like a Tuesday morning. There was a lot of talk in regards to potentially there would be retrenchment coming along, but no one knew who was going to hit, right? So there I was on a Tuesday morning in the office doing my work. I suddenly get called into an office, and I was given the news of, oh yeah, by the way, this is no fault of your own, but we're going through this retrenchment process, right? This is my second job. I was still in IT. I was just staring at them in complete shock at that point. And but I know I was going through the motions of asking the right questions to understand the situation better. Walked out of that room. I remember leaving the building, and my then boss was waiting for me outside the turnstile with a box of my items in a box, and then I had to bring it back. I was still very shaky as I got into the cab to get back home. Obviously, I called my mom and I was like, oh my God, this just happened. And as I was processing this, and this was on the ride back home, one of the first things that came to my mind is this really a bad thing? Because just a couple of months ago, I was thinking to myself, is tech, information security, IT service desk, is that where I see myself? And I knew a couple of months ago, I had already started looking at human resources, as we call it. Right now, we call it human capital, human development. Back then, human resources. I was looking into that as a career, and I was talking to a lot of people because that was something that was interesting to me. So in the cab ride back, I was just mulling on the thought that, what if this was an opportunity, right? But that's all I had in my head. I went and dropped off my things. I came back to see a couple of my other colleagues who got retrenched as well. We were all sitting down, talking, drinking, and the days turned to weeks. And there were opportunities almost immediately for me to go back to tech, actually, immediately. And but I took a step back and I went like, let me process my thoughts. Let me think through it. And I knew a lot of people were like, are you crazy? You got retrenched. The next thing you want to do is get back onto the career track, go and take a role, get the money rolling in. Like, why wouldn't you do that, right? And it's not that I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to just take a little bit of time to ask myself, is this really what I wanted to do? And a couple of weeks later, I told myself, I came up with a plan to say, since I'm interested in going into this line and I've been finding out about it, why not I give myself the time to really see if I can go into that line? And I gave myself a timeline. I said, I'm going to give myself 3 months to be able to see if I can make it into a role, entry level role, or whatever stage that they are willing to take me in, and learn my way up. I know I was taking a risk, but at the same time, I wanted to see if this interest that has sparked in me is something that will take me through my career. Truth be told, close to the end of the third month, almost to the fourth month, I got a contract role with a bank. It was a private bank. It was a contract role that was like a hybrid sort of recruitment / reporting role that I took. Again, I was going from a full-time role to a contract role, but I told myself, you know what, I'm going to go down this line and I'm going to see what's going to happen. And I'm glad that I did that, because it was only through that 1 year and then subsequent other roles that I realized, actually, I do like the human resources side of it. I like meeting people. I like talking to people, but more than that, I like the ability at that point to be able to connect with people and see their strengths, development areas, and how I can connect them to a role, how I could discuss with the hiring managers what the role could be to understand more about the industry. It gave me a lot of insights that my previous role was not able to give me. And I thrived on that, right? But again, the reason why I quoted this particular example was it took a really difficult time for me to come out of my comfort zone. But the one decision that I did that I don't regret is I was listening to the voice inside me, or to my gut feel, whatever you call it, to say, give yourself that opportunity to try something out. And I think that is being true to yourself. That is to give yourself a chance, right? To see if something might work out or not. It could have not worked out, and then I would have thought of something else that I would need to do. And that has happened to me. Before I landed my first job, there was a role that I lasted in for a month, and then I had to leave because that particular company wasn't suitable for me. But again, I think being authentic is listening to what you feel that you want to try, and it's not just a feeling, it's for you to sit down, think on it, meditate, write down, whatever you call it, and go with an idea that you have just to see how far it can bring you. And for me, I think that's what to me was authentic about that journey for me. And since that experience, I've had other experiences in the past where, it may have gone positively, it may not have, but I've never regretted it because I felt I've given it the opportunity to really grow and learn if that works for me or not. I'm now in my 40s, and for me, I think I'm still growing and learning and finding out not just about myself, but the working environment, what makes me tick, what I dislike. And I think it's a journey, right? We, unlike our previous generations, at least in Singapore, we have, I guess, a really late retirement age. Now, whether you want to work up to that age or not, that's entirely up to you. But I think when we have such a rich and long life ahead of us, what we really need to do is give ourselves the opportunity to be able to pivot, learn, and grow.
Lots of wisdom there. Lots of wisdom. I have to take some notes because I have to write a summary, but I really love what you say. And you relate that experience. Oh my God, it's like you remember exactly which day, Tuesday. I was like, oh my God, how long was that ago?
It was a long time ago, but I recall every step of what happened that day.
Well, and it goes to show how deep that impact is. But what I want to say is that you asked yourself, is it really bad? Because you're moaning about, maybe this is an opportunity rather than, oh, I lost my job now, let me jump straight to another one, which what most of us would do instinctively, right? I want to add one word there is I think I hear the word, not hear the word. I think I hear one of that process there was that big pause, internal pause. And you ask yourself, is this really, really what I want to do? And I think a lot of people, I don't know how many people really ask themselves, is this what I really want to do? And when they ask themselves the questions, and you say, well, of course, it takes a very difficult situation to kind of, yeah, do I want to continue doing? And next thing is, even that happen is to listen to what you feel, really listen inside. Because that authenticity and that truth is from inside, and listen to that deeply and then try it out. And by what that is when you are being true to yourself and you give yourself the chance is to try it out, to take that scary step forward. Yeah, I think it's so beautiful. And I have one more thing I need to say. I'm not going to say the age and repeat the age part, but I'm going to say it's no regrets. Even though if you have tried and didn't work out, you did it. Rather than saying, oh, I know I don't want this, but I really don't want to give up my comfort zone because it give me the money and the stability. Now do I do it? But it's like, am I being true to myself? Have I listened to myself? And I need to try it out. And it's about the journey and the growing and the learning, and it didn't stop there. And I like the late retirement part too. And by the way, I don't think it's just Singapore now. I think UK is also 67 for retirement age. So I think it's the same. Yeah. I would say is I want to add one more. I mean, talk about your own so-called that journey, the career choice was really listen deep inside and take the daring step, take the risk and try that out, And what about that authenticity for whom you work for?
Great question. I also feel it's something that you learn along the way, unless you're one of the very few blessed people who kind of know what works from them for the get-go, then good for you, right? Like for me, I recall having gone through a few experiences of figuring out the type of environment that I want to be in, or the type of environment that makes me happy. Again, I had to go through a few of those experiences to figure out what I want. And it's not just about the company values. I think a lot of time, I think about when we prepare for interviews, we go to the website, we look at the company's values, vision, mission, and then we're like, great, I feel so aligned with this. But more than not, the way of working style could be so different. They can have an awesome, fantabulous vision, mission, statement, values, but it could be very different from a company culture when you start working with them, right? So I always say that, and I've always said this to myself, that this sounds great. I'm going to go in and I give myself really the 3 to 6 months to really see if they're really walking the talk and it's not just corporate speak. And I always tell people that, and I believe this, it's not about, I don't like the word work-life balance. It's work-life integration, meaning we work, and this could be for yourself or for anybody else, and we have our personal life. And I think it's really, really important that we resonate with the work that we're doing in order for us to really live a fulfilled life and be healthy mentally and physically. So having said that, I think for me, again, the entire word authenticity and connecting that to who we work for, you truly won't get the feel of how it feels to be unless you were working with them as an intern and then you flipped over as a full-timer. In most processes, you go through an interview process, you get to ask a lot of questions. If you're one of those people who are willing to ask, actually, can I speak to a few more people and then make a decision? Great for you. The more people you meet, the more you're able to draw the commonality in the culture. And I think that's what's worked for me. I've also been part of organizations where I was there for less than a year. Again, it came out while I was working for these organizations that the working culture doesn't necessarily fit my values, right? And yeah, it's unfortunate, but we have to move on from there. I think the question I always ask myself is, are you able to get up and go to work every day feeling excited about what you're doing, or are you dreading to go to work? And if you're dreading, then I think that's already a sign that there is something in the role or in the scope of your work, or maybe the culture, that is not keeping you motivated, and you need to find out why. So I would say it's a journey that it takes time to figure out, and give yourself the time to figure it out. I think a lot of us are also very quick to come to a judgment. Sometimes it's actually my mindset that needs to change, not necessarily who I'm working with. So I really have to also learn along the way that authenticity is also about figuring fact from feelings. Sometimes we put so much of emphasis on feelings that we always walk away thinking, I'm authentic, I'm right I'm right. Whatever I'm thinking is right. I'm being true to myself. We can't always be right. And a lot of people know that, but to say that is another thing, right? Sometimes that we are in a particular environment to learn something about ourselves or to change something about ourselves. And if that is an environment where you are there's something that you learned about yourself that needs to change, maybe that's an employer that you can grow with. But if it is an employer or environment that goes against everything you stand for or you believe in, then there's absolute no. So I think there's different perspectives to look at, a working environment and an employer. But it really takes a lot of that reflection and awareness to sit down and analyze the situation before you really make the decision.
Yeah, I love what you say about figuring the facts from the feeling. It's not just how you feel, but also understanding what is the facts there. And a lot of that reflection and awareness. And I just can't help but wonder, when the reflection and the awareness, is it all done by yourself, or you find that there will be some support, that will be help? Yeah, because this is not I mean, we know, we talk about it, listen to myself, being true to myself, give myself time, try it out. I have to say that in all honesty, it's difficult.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's never easy.
To say something, because you mentioned about, you go to the company, not just their value, the missions, you can see their website, but it's really, are they really walking what they say, walking the talk? Yeah, so I find, I think maybe in my line of work, I see a lot of people have that knowledge. Oh, I know I need to do this, I should be doing this, I'll be this, but somehow they just feel just something is missing, So it's like, even it's still difficult to kind of do that. And I think what I'm hearing is that the big keyword that came to me was that listening, the awareness, and the reflection. And how can you how can you truly listen to yourself and have the awareness and the reflection? I'm putting you in the spot, am I? Sorry, I wasn't practiced before. But I just find that this is such interesting. I mean, if I am like 20 or 30 years younger, I was like, yeah, I know what you say, but how to listen and how to reflect and how to be aware? So easy to say, but how?
No, I think those are really great questions. First of all, let me address one point that you brought up. Is it all done by yourself? Is everything on you to figure it out? No way, right? There's no way you can figure everything out. I think for me, when I look back at the different roles that I've done, what I realized is that in each role, in each workplace, there was a informal or formal mentor that I had. As someone whom I would say, when I use the word mentor or sponsor, some people try to talk about sponsor, and there's a difference between sponsor and mentor. But what I'm saying is, there is someone whom I trusted, that I could go and talk to about a challenge or a concern that I was having, or how I could improve myself, right? And some of these conversations, you would know really quickly in those conversations a lot about reflection about yourself, because you have ideas about yourself. But when you're getting feedback from others is when you get to see your blind spots. One of the things I realized, and this is probably because it was a value instilled by my mom when I was young, is just, she would always ask me, this goes back to an incident when I was a kid. So I was asked to clean the toilet. I was like, oh, great, easy peasy. Went in, cleaned the toilet, I left. I told my mom, I did a fabulous job. The toilet is clean. Go and check it out for yourself. And then I walked away in all happiness. 10 minutes later, my mom comes back and she goes like, yeah, you cleaned it, but it wasn't what I expected it to be. I remember looking at her and go like, what do you mean? It's clean, right? And I remember my mom going like, well, it's clean by your standards, but you didn't ask me if I find it clean. You didn't ask me if I'm okay with it. Is there anything you should change, or anything else you should clean more? And I'm bringing up this example because this is how important feedback loop is, right? A lot of times we think we're doing the right thing. We feel that we're going the right direction, and we don't ask for feedback because, again, it's the pace of the life that we're living in, or we feel we have been in a field for many years and I've done this before, I know it's right. Right? Often the feedback loop, which is us approaching mentors or us approaching our peers or even people who work for us to go like, hey, did that help? Did what we just spoke about helped you in any way? Did what I did look correct? Is there anything that you think I can change? And I've always had that mindset because of that one incident. And my mom has always re-emphasized that several times when I was at home. So again, I think for me to help me grow is the ability to ask for feedback and take in the feedback. Right? I think one is to ask and another is to receive the feedback. And always go with the mindset that you're not always going to get fantabulous reviews. You're not always going to go back to your desk smiling. There could be times when you feel hurt, you feel embarrassed, you feel, extremely vulnerable. To ask for feedback is actually to be vulnerable. But I think that is where the growth area is, right? And for me, I still take that as a practice for myself till today. When I submit a presentation, when I give a speech, I always try to play that back and see how I felt, or ask the person, hey, how did it go for you? And I think that feedback loop has always helped me to reflect and ground myself. And of course, let's also be real. Sometimes there will be people who choose to be a critic just for the sake of being critical, right? And I think that when you hear that, because often when people give you the feedback, if you take a moment to go like, actually what they say could be correct, when you really reflect on it and think about it, you know that there's something in it. But there are times where someone's giving you a feedback and you go like, okay, not quite sure. So I think you need your own discerning ability to be able to sort of sieve out the naysayers from the people who are really looking to give you good feedback. I hope that addressed the question, Aries.
Yeah,
about the reflection piece.
Yeah. I'm mindful of time. We have to quickly round up, but I just want to say just quickly that reflection awareness, there is a lot of that internal, but it's a lot of that openness to ask for feedback, kind of check in, because we all have blind spot. But when we ask for the feedback, it's also being open to receive and take in. And you mentioned about mentor, about someone that you trust, someone you can ask. And I think you brought in that example of your mom. And I think what I'm hearing is you have that model, the role model you see from young. It's not about, oh, I do something, yeah, done, that's it. But it's really about, did I do a good job? And I need to get some feedback on it. So I would say it's like a whole process, the inside out, outside in, where you see that journey of that growth. And it's about being true, but the being true is not, oh, it's just me, I don't need to listen to anybody, I just know what I want. But it's me, but I also need to listen so I can be better, to be closer to that core. And I want to end this with one last question. People bear with me, is about when we are all in this authenticity journey, when we embrace our core self, how does that help you to be a person of inclusivity? Because as we know, authenticity is about me and me and me, and highlight of our being individuality. How can we be inclusive when we are authentic?
Great question. And I feel it's a very philosophical question as well. But I will go back to the quote that I mentioned about Brene Brown, where it's about cultivating courage, but also being vulnerable. I think when you're being authentic, you put on the lens of vulnerability, and that's when you know that each and every single one of us go through a whole very different journey. So empathy is part of that, right? When you're being vulnerable, and when you're being vulnerable to yourself, you also realize that this is potentially the same or similar journey that several other individuals go through. And then there is the additional lenses that they view the world because of their race, religion, color of their skin, where they grew up. All these things come into play. And I think when I think about being someone who's authentic, I put myself in that situation, and that gives me sort of an empathy lenses to look at someone else and go like, what could they have gone through? What is different for them? And again, it stems from a growth mindset, a curiosity mindset, where you look at that person and you go like, hey, how is their journey different to mine? Is there something to learn from that journey? And I think that is sort of the beginning stage of where you start to be inclusive. You start to be inclusive when you're willing to not just only let yourself be vulnerable, but create a safe space for others to be vulnerable and to share with you, and is to hold that safe space. I think that's the beginning of being inclusive. And then there's other things that can stem from there, which is to be an ally and support them and advocate. But I think the core of beginning for being inclusivity is the willingness to be authentic, not just to yourself, but to others, and to have that curious mindset or the growth mindset that helps you want to understand how they are being authentic in their journey. So I think this is particularly interesting for, and I always talk about this in Asia, because when people think about Asia, they always think about a homogeneous population to some extent, but yet there's so much of differences within us. And Singapore is so different from our neighboring country, Malaysia, and again, everything in Indonesia. I mean, I was part of an organization that was rooted out of Indonesia. And while we have similarities, there's so much of differences. And I think creating the space of learning and just be curious about other people just allows you to be more inclusive. And I don't know where I started from. So again, in Singapore, I am a minority race, right? I don't know whether that has given me also the impetus to think about how are minorities in other countries, in other aspects look like? What does minority in their country look like, right? So that has also given me an impetus to think about how we can be more inclusive. Last but not least, I do want to mention another very personal story or personal point to me, which is my brother is autistic, right? And growing up in an environment, this is in the 80s, where people didn't necessarily know what being autistic is all about. And my brother looks extremely normal. He walks, dresses normally, but he's afraid of loud noises, and he does not like social interactions. So growing up with someone like that, a lot of times there are people who come to us and they go like, what's wrong with your brother? Like, why is he being this way? And I had to take on the role, because my mom was often too emotional to handle these conversations. I would take on the role of explaining to them, my brother's autistic, what does that mean? And this is the reasons why he's behaving this way. So I felt that from young, I was also somehow was in this circumstances and opportunity that made me realize that what you see on the outside is not all there is. There could be very different reasons to why people behave a certain way, handle circumstances a certain way. And I think that's helped me to always bear that in mind when I'm having conversations, to ask, seek, and understand. That helps me to be more inclusive.
We are 8 minutes past. I want to keep this short, but I think we have shared a lot of gems about that inclusivity, and of course your own personal journey as a minority in Singapore. And I don't know how you manage. I have some experience myself with my children. I know how difficult it is. Of course, it's different. I'm a parent, more from a mom perspective than a sibling perspective. But I love what you say about when authentic is to put on the lens of being vulnerable and kind of have that empathy and curiosity where we hold a space, we create a space for others. Authenticity is not about just me, but it's about me and you, and with that empathy and that curiosity. And with that, I don't know if you can quickly just give me like maybe just 1 point, or if you can 3 points. How would you encourage anyone who listen to today's live or even the replay, to walk or embrace their own authentic journey? 3 tips, or 1 tips, big one, small one.
I'll try to make this quick. So I think the first thing I would say is act upon your thinking, or act upon an idea that you have. And what I mean is, when you have a nagging feeling or an idea that keeps coming up to you, act upon it. Take a small step and see where that goes, right? I would say there's a lot of reasons why not to do something. But there's only one reason. You don't want to have regret at a later age that you didn't try something and you don't know how that went. So I'll say act upon an idea, a thought that you have, and really give yourself the place to be you. And I will say maybe the second tip would be, when you act upon it, when you take your first step towards it, to listening to yourself, don't be hard on yourself as to the outcome. The key here is that you're taking a first step, you're trying, and it could go bad or it could go good, right? So it's not to hold yourself attached to an outcome, but enjoy the journey. I know this sounds very philosophical, but the truth is, when you attach yourself to an outcome, I think what happens there is you fail to enjoy the learnings and the journey into the outcome. And if you don't reach that outcome, you then take it upon yourself to berate yourself and really get hard on yourself. So I would just say two tips. One is to take action on an idea or feeling or whatever that you might have that keeps coming up again and again, because I think there's something in there that speaks to you that needs to be heard. So take a step, reflect. And I would say, again, don't hold yourself hostage to an outcome, but enjoy the journey and learn during the journey to be you. Different people at different parts, and give yourself that space.
Thank you so much. I love that. Take the action and enjoy the learning journey, not attach ourselves to the outcome. I think we all look too much into the outcome and forgot that it's a journey that's more important. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aries, for giving me this opportunity.
And see that anybody, if you have any questions, I know I didn't see any questions. If there's any question, you're still welcome to put it on the comments or chat, and I will chase after Shree if she doesn't answer your questions. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aries. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.